Hey everybody, this is Kenny with another edition of the Yak with Mac. This week I have a special guest, VP of Customer Care in the Midwest, Dan DiGirolamo, and we just talk pure leadership. Listen in. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Yak with Mac. This is Kenny. As promised, I have got a phenomenal guest with us today who has taken the time to drop some knowledge on us. I want to introduce Dan DiGirolamo. Wait a second, I said that wrong. Got me one more time.
DiGirolamo.
DiGirolamo.
There you go.
Right, we got it. DiGirolamo, who is the Vice President of Customer Care in the Midwest region. Dan, thank you so much for joining. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Kenny. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much. It was great to meet you and get invited. I say it's about a month ago on the Juneteenth event that you did, which I thought was just outstanding. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And it really showed what a great leader that you are, putting on an event like that for your team. Um, I'd like to start this way. How about if we go ahead and walk a little bit through your career journey? You could go back as far as you want or as short as you want, but what are some things that got you to this place at this time?
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. I've really worked for two companies in my lifetime, so I don't know if I'm old school that way, but my first company was a financial company. I was a stockbroker out of school. That lasted a little while, but I ended up at a mutual fund company in Boston, and I was a phone rep and for years, and did some sales marketing stuff, did some client service. We sold to broker dealers and really talked about mutual funds and annuities. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt like I was good with numbers and good with people, and I was just trying to find my way. And started to get comfortable and started to think about career track, and spent time doing a bunch of different things. I think one of the things that I developed a strategy early on when I talked to somebody was I want to do a lot of different things. I've heard John Fryer talk about, hey, say yes to opportunities. I felt like I was able to do that at that job and do different things from training to marketing and stand up and doing pitches and that kind of thing to brokers to a lot of stuff on the client service and leadership side. And then I just got a passion for developing people, and it kind of brought me through that track. It was interesting in 2000. I got a call, and they were like, "Hey, I need you to run this new thing called Work at Home." It's funny. 21 years later, it's come full circle. But I did that.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that for a piece, and then so I relocated with that company for that, and then all of a sudden, T-Mobile opened this beautiful call center in 2005, pretty close to where I was, and I was involved in actually recruiting T-Mobile to Maine, which is where I was living and where I live, and kind of the rest is history. Came into the call center and just absolutely loved the organization, loved the people, and then did that in a senior manager and director role, running the Oakland, Maine site, which is in central Maine. And then became a vice president 4 or 5 years ago, running what was the East region, now central region of care. And now just this summer is 16 years at T-Mobile. So it's been quite the journey.
Wow. That's an amazing story, an amazing journey. It sounds like one of the lessons along the way is to do a little bit of everything and get educated in a little bit of everything. Maybe expand on that a little bit. I think that's great advice for leaders today as well.
Yeah. So, I used to think it was a dirty word, right? Take a lateral move was a dirty word. And I would tell you, to me, not only is it not a dirty word, I think it's essential. And we, you talk about cross-pollination. Some of the best leaders we have, whether it's, care, engineering, consumer markets, doing different things and creating different skill sets. I mean, the baseline for us, Kenny, is people. But I think going in and, whether it's a learning and development track, I went into a more technical, analytical track, and I did that. But I always had an exit strategy to say, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go learn. I want to really know. And I was the guy that went in and be like, I need to sit down with like the one that does the work. Like don't sit me with the leadership people of this group. Sit me with the people that are actually doing the do. And let me learn that way so I could kind of understand what they went through and understand kind of the whole A to Z process. So I made it that point, and I would go and I would do, a year or two and then back and take another role in the leadership organization. And I think if I felt like I wanted to go lead a large group of people in a large organization and have an impact on the business and people, I needed to kind of know all these different things. And that's what I decided to do.
Wow, I'm so glad you said that because you're right. Even today, with an organization our size, if someone says, "Hey, I want to take a lateral move and do this," people will look at what, really? And but it could be the best thing for your career. I love that. I think that's phenomenal advice. Let's jump into leadership, Dan. And so you are with your leaders daily. I loved how you knew almost everybody that was on your call, just a personal connection. So my sense is that you probably do a lot of things out in the field, shoulder to shoulder. So you're seeing a lot that's going on out there. Let's start on a real positive tip. What are 2 or 3 things that you're seeing right now that you want leaders to continue to do, that when you see it, you're like, yes, glad that leader is doing that? What are 2 or 3 things that you're seeing right now that you want leaders to really continue to do?
Yeah, well, I think I'll speak in today, here and now, Kenny, and going through, it's a pandemic. It's we've gone through periods of isolation. We've gone through obviously a working from home, starting to kind of flirt with bringing people back in the office and in a hybrid world. And I think first and foremost it's about compassion. And I happen to work, in my opinion, for one of probably in our organization, the most compassionate leader I've met, which is Callie Field, and seeing how she interacts and the compassion that she has as an individual and how that really flows through, I believe, the entire care organization. So, people have been through a lot in the last 18 months, 2 years. If we lead with that compassion, now we got work to do. Everybody knows that. And we got high expectations. But I think, we've turned a little bit, we call them coaches in care. We don't call them supervisors. We don't call them, we call them coaches for a reason. And I think we could probably, life coaches starting to become more and more that role. And that comes through a little bit from just compassion about people and taking an interest and showing that your team that they're important to you and what you're going through and how you can help them. So I've seen a ton of compassion. I've seen a ton of walking people through really, really difficult days, difficult weeks, difficult places that they're in their lives right now. So I would say, the one thing I first and foremost want leaders right now to keep doing is just, have that compassion for your people, talk to your people, make sure you connect with your people, you earn their trust, and partly is asking about them, not just asking about their performance, first and foremost. So that's the one thing. The second I've seen is just the adaptability. We've had leaders doing a lot of different things, because what we found really quickly was when you have your team in and around you, or in around a table, or in around, whatever office you're in, versus in a virtual world, you can't just do the same things you've always done the same way and expect the same results. So, we were like, okay, we were, I think, a month into the pandemic, and it was like a month in, we were like, okay, we'll be back in office next week. We'll be back in office next week. And finally, when it hit a few months in, we're like, okay, this isn't ending anytime soon. It was like, okay, I went to my team. I'm like, you're never, ever going to see your team ever again. That's the mindset we got to put ourselves in right now to try to change what we're doing, and how do we adapt, and how do we create culture in a virtual world? How do you be visible in a virtual world? How do you go create that culture and being adaptable to different communication styles and methods? So the compassion and the adaptability I've seen just flourish in the last 12 to 18 months, I'd say that can continue no matter where we work from.
And that is so great, because those are human things, right? It sounds like if we're just human, especially on the compassion side, if we're just human, then the rest is going to come, and the adaptability. If you can't adapt today, man, you're a sunk. There's no doubt about it. And I love the way you put that. So let's go on the converse side now. What are some things that you're seeing leaders struggle with, and what are two or three things that you always advise them to help overcome those struggles?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing I see, and it's probably a little bit kind of opposite what I just talked about from a leader perspective, which is a work-life balance, right? You've heard the term work-life balance for years, right? And it meant, maybe you wouldn't check email at 9 o'clock at night. I think that that balance people are struggling with. I struggle with. I think people that struggle when they're in their homes and then all of a sudden they just open the door or walk around the corner and life happens, and all of a sudden, I tell everybody there's always an email you didn't send today. Like I don't know about you all, but like in the drive or in the you're like, oh gosh, I meant to do these 85 things and I only got to 80 of them. And am I going back on my back on my laptop at 10 o'clock at night or at 6 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep or on a weekend? I would say, and to that I would say your team benefits when you're running at 100%, and you can't run 100% 24/7. You just can't. So my advice is find ways to create moments for yourself as a leader, and we all need them. And some, I found the best can create some routines, even if it's, and I know this, but even if it's a walk to a mailbox, or even if it's a walk with a dog, or if it's something that, hey, between X and Y is family time, and I really got to leave my phone somewhere else off my hip, and I got to not, when I get up from my workstation, I got to actually shut the screen off. I can't leave it. I can't leave the sound, so when I hear the pop of an email, I'm running back to it. So I think creating the separation, creating that balance, creating your own mental, physical health routines and plans. Some people it's yoga. We got a site putting a yoga studio kind of in sight because they've had a lot of success with those moments. So things like that, I think, are going to have changed, and I think for the positive, we're going to continue some of those. I don't love to hear the stories of, hey, I'm on my screen, and then when my shift changes, I just turn to my personal screen over here, and then I start gaming over there, and it's all screens all the time. I think you got to find your own balance of health of when it's time to put it away, and then when you go back to your team, A, they'll appreciate it, and setting that tone, and B, you're going to give 100% to your team at that point.
Yeah, I love that. You gave such great advice and details there. It's one thing for us to just say have a good work-life balance, but you painted such a picture that we've all been there, right? Oh my gosh, I forgot. And the big difference, I'll speak for me, right? From now then a year and a half ago is that if I forgot something, all right, it's in the office tomorrow, right? Now, hey, I could just go downstairs and do it. And I could just go in the living room. I could just go in my office. And so I love that, and leaders really, really need that. They really need to have that work-life balance. What's one other thing that you're seeing right now leaders struggle a little bit with?
Yeah, I don't know about struggle. I think figuring it out is probably what I would say from a communication side. And I would add in somebody. I think there's an element to having organization and structure in a little bit more of a virtual world or a hybrid virtual world than we've seen historically, at least in care, where somebody can come in and kind of just, fly, on the fly, make some decisions and do that. And in a virtual world, it's got to have a little bit more organization and structure. So those that haven't leaned into planning their day, planning their week, understanding that, I think have learn that they got to do that. And then from a communication side, I think the struggle is, in a virtual world, and I kind of said, how do you be visible in a virtual world? And everybody's kind of figured that out for themselves, or had to figure out with their teams. But I think people have struggled with, hey, what's the frequency in which I should be reaching out, or should I be doing meetings? How should I be doing it? Well, I think everybody knows me. Email probably is low on the list, right? But when it comes to a chat tool, or at least a meeting when somebody's on camera and you can see, even if they're in a 2-inch by 2-inch box, better than seeing a blank screen. And then what's the impact of that communication? Are you using social media to communicate to your team? How often do you need a one-on-one check? And what I've talked about is, if I do a one-on-one with you sitting down, I see your body language, I can look in and we're making eye contact and we're having that discussion. If I did that virtually, is it the same? Or how many virtual touches do I need to kind of have that same impact I might be able to have if I'm standing in front of you? So I think from a communication, we've all struggled with, hey, how often, when, what, how? So I think we're going to continue to evolve that because in a mostly work from office, maybe some hybrid days at home, you're going to have part of your team in office and part of your team at home. What does a team meeting look like? What does a brainstorming session look like? How do people that's in or out of the office, everybody's working, it's just a matter of where, but we want everybody to have that same level of input and impact. So I think it's quite frankly something we're going to continue to, I say struggle, but really figure out the best way for all of us to have the biggest impact with our teams, our people, and essentially our customers.
No question. Wow. And that was some spectacular advice. It is different. It is very, very different virtually as opposed to sitting across from somebody, in a room. And it's hard because everybody's situation is different. So, I've struggled, I know, with how often as well. So I think that's great advice. All right, let's shift over to you, Dan, for a few minutes. What are some things that you consistently do that develops you? What are you doing these days that continues to develop yourself?
Yeah, well, I would first tell you, Kenny, I believe it's a mindset. And here's what I tell you is, and I tell this to people all the time is, hey, I know one thing for sure, and that's that I don't know everything. And so, for me, it's that mental state of I come knowing I can get better every day. I come knowing I don't know it all, knowing and wanting to learn. And so, and we're all in a dynamic business. It's exciting. I wouldn't want to be in any other industry, in any other place. Having said that, it comes with a lot of challenges because we change things every day on the fly. So I come in with that mindset of, hey, I want to learn. I want to learn new things about myself. I want to learn new things about my leadership style, about my industry, and all this stuff. So I have that, I don't know if you call it a thirst, but I have that humbleness to know that I don't know it all. I need to continue to grow as a leader. So I kind of start out with there. And I'm like, where do I have my opportunities then to continue to develop? I think a few things I do. I would tell you, I try to read. I try to stay up to date on what's going on with our industry and our organization and other competitors out there. So I tend to read and share things and share articles. I love to do that and say, hey, I just read this. What do you think about this? How do you think this is going to impact us? What can we do? Is it something that we all need to know about? And then how do we talk to it, whether it be with our employees or our customers, if it were to come up? So love to stay kind of abreast on things like that. I went back to school. I love to continue to some organizational type learning.
Yeah.
I don't know about everybody else, but I appreciate learning now more than I did when I was 20, for sure. So I do appreciate that growth and that challenge for myself. So but to be honest, most of the development I get comes from my teams and my people. I try to open myself up as to my organization, to my team, certainly to my directs. They give me feedback all the time, and that's typically my best source of getting some development for myself. I just had, a direct report come in and be like, hey, I need to tell you what you did, how it made me feel, and how I would love for us to handle this going forward. And we just had a great conversation about what my intent was, and it wasn't the impact that it had. And I I recognized I didn't handle it the best way, and I needed to kind of just reevaluate. So those moments for me are precious for my own development and for those of my team, and I take those very seriously.
You started all that by saying mindset, and it sounded to me like a growth mindset every single day and just being open to learning every day. And I love that you said you went back to school. I mean, I got goosebumps with everything that you just said, because it's things that I really push for leaders, especially new leaders. Hey, do something every single day to develop yourself. It sounds like you do several things, which I love. All right, I've got two more questions for you.
Sure.
One would be, who has been the biggest influence on your leadership and your career and your leadership style?
Whew. Well, this might be cheating, but I'm going to answer it a couple different ways. I would first say I probably look and feel a lot like my dad when he was a business leader in his career. And I don't know about you, but for me, I end up would do something or say something, and I'd sit back. I'd be like, "Damn, I sound a lot like my dad when I said that." And I'm starting to, and I think the more gray hair I get, I don't know if I was starting to look like him too. But the other thing is, I would tell you, Kenny, for me, and it almost goes back to the beginning when I told you I kind of tried to do some different things throughout my career to gain experience. The best thing about doing that is I was able to learn from a lot of different leaders over that time. And it took me a while in my career to understand the people I butted heads with were probably the ones that I learned the most from. And I remember one of them early in my career taught me that, John Crutch, which from a previous organization. And, I was a guy, we were in the trenches and had that mindset and doing this. And he would take me and be like, "Hey, have you thought about a year from now and 3 years from now?" And I'm looking at him, I'm like 25 going, I'm trying to get through a Wednesday. Like, and you're talking to me about 3-5 years from now? What are you doing? Like, so, but it forced me and it influenced me in my career to really understand what he was doing, why he was doing it, and how much I should appreciate it versus try to buck that trend. And I could go over each leader that I've had and tell you, here's what I took from them, and I tried to take a piece of that and really take the best out of it, make it my own, and make it part of who I was as a leader. So I think there's been a ton of influences on me and my career, and kind of have helped me along. But I go at it where I know there's a lot of people that are better than me in a lot of things, but if I can help, if I can gain some of that magic, and I'm confident enough to just ask people. It's amazing when you ask somebody to talk to you about their strength, how much they'll tell you and how appreciative they are, and it makes yourself better.
Wow. I don't even know if I need to ask you this last question. I'm going to do it anyway, because you've just added so much value, especially for new leaders. So I want to focus in on that for 1 second as my last question. And then I have one more baseball question for you, but I'll get to that in 1 second. I'm a brand new leader. I just got promoted. I'm only maybe 6 months in. Maybe I'm leading a retail store, or I'm a life coach in a call center. What would be one piece of advice that you would give them that's going to be watching this? One piece of advice as they start their leadership journey.
Oh, wow. I think the one thing is understand you don't know it all. Be able to have the confidence to reach out and say, I don't know. And don't be ashamed and don't hide and don't think you should know everything as a leader, because everybody's been in your chair in that new leader, and everybody that I know would be willing to help you. And then just focus on the big rocks. And what I mean is, you're going to have a lot to do, and you got to look at it and be like, hey, what are the few things I have to get done, and make sure you prioritize your team and your employees and your customers in that. Get those things done first, and then the little rocks will come after that. But focus on those big ones.
I love that. And there are going to be so many new leaders that are going to be watching this. So that's just outstanding advice. All right, I have to have a little fun with you because I saw when we spoke before that you're a big Red Sox guy because your face just totally turned. You see that big smile? It wasn't on there when I mentioned 1986. So I'm not going to do that because the Red Sox are having a phenomenal year. I mean, are you surprised by the year that they're having? I mean, without Mookie Betts, without Jackie Brown, I mean, they traded their whole outfield actually, right? Are you surprised by the Red Sox here? And then I've got two pitchers I want to get your opinion on real quick.
Sure. Yeah. Listen. I still 1986. Man, I was just barely a teenager, and that was impactful back then because we hadn't really won anything in a long time. So, but I would tell you, I am a little surprised. But I just want to go back to it's about team, and sometimes. It's the old adage where if you had all the highest paid players in the world, but they're all taking individual taxi cabs to the games, you're not going to win anything. But if you're going as that team and you can gel and you can come together, sometimes, team will overtake talent. And I think that's what you're seeing with the Red Sox this year. It's fun to just see some young guys out there having fun.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm so glad that I asked that question. And that's why I threw in the Mookie Betts thing, although he was a great player. I just think that they've all just picked up the slack. And there's some leadership there with Alex Cora.
Yep.
I'm sure he made his mistakes, but we all do. But I'm so glad you said it's the sum of the whole, man. It's such a leadership team. All right. Roger Clemens or Pedro Martinez? Better pitcher? Pedro. Wow. Okay. You didn't hesitate, huh?
No, listen. I love me some Roger Texas Clemens. But Pedro, when I watched him in person, I saw a thin, lanky guy. I saw a competitor, and he was just some of the biggest natural talent I've ever had the privilege of watching. So I thought Pedro was one of the best pitchers I've ever seen.
I totally agree. And he still had a little in the tank when he came to the Mets. So he gave us about 2 years of vintage Pedro until he started getting hurt. But Dan, this has been just a pleasure, man. I could probably speak to you all day about leadership, about baseball, probably too. So much you added to us. And I just want to really thank you so much for taking the time. And I know we're going to have a lot of leaders that are going to be impacted by the words that you said. So I can't thank you enough. Leaders. And so thank you. So I'm going to hit you up to get you back on as well. We'll do a part two. Maybe we'll just do baseball leadership or something like that.
I love it, Kenny. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I love talking about leadership, developing leaders, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, folks, this is Kenny and Dan. This has been the Yak with Mac. We will talk to you next week. Dan, thank you so much again.
Thanks, Kenny. Have a great one.